He's kind of poo mouth. Oh yes, we are doing it. Limp Bizkit for me was a band that I was very, very much aware of back in the day, but I was never as gripped by them as a lot of other people that I knew were at the time. I didn't dislike them. They never raised to that level of heavy that I was looking for, I think, back then. And back then I would have never heard of, Napalm Death or Cattle Decapitation, even Slayer at that point, but I knew that Limp Bizkit wasn't quite what I was looking for. So I saw other people obsessed with them, and I didn't really understand why they were. I thought they were cool and everything, I wasn't on that hype train so much. At some point in the early to mid 2010s, I don't know what was going on with me, but I suddenly had this dawning realization that, oh my god, yes, Limp Bizkit were the best band in the world, and why did we stop listening to them? I wasn't even listening to metal particularly at the time. That was a phase where I was listening to primarily electronic music, drum and bass, and dubstep for the most part. For whatever reason, at that point in my life, I had like a second wave of... I guess it was when nostalgia started to kick in. I don't know where it came from, because at that point, in the mid-2000s, no one was listening to Limp Bizkit anymore. I certainly wasn't, and I wasn't around people listening to music that was even remotely similar. But for whatever reason, I guess I re-listened to this album after many years of not having done so and gone, wow, I enjoy this more now than I did back in the day. From that point onwards, I've held Limp Bizkit in much higher regard than I did when I was a kid. Which makes no sense. As I'm getting older and more mature, their idiotic, immature music is appealing to me more and more and more. I don't know what that says about me, or about the music itself. It's a mystery, I guess. These days, I am a big Limp Bizkit fan. They were a band that I never got to see live. They're one of my, in my bucket list of bands that I want to see live, Limp Bizkit is definitely there. And especially in 2024, almost 2025, it seems like there's this second wave of Limp Bizkit appreciation. So it wasn't... I think I was way earlier than anyone else. But I'm clearly not alone in my appreciation or the recognition of their musical quality. I felt that Still Sucks, the most recent album, the very first time I heard it, I thought, this is really good. It was way too short. But what was there was really good. Not all of it, but overall, considering the time in which it comes out, Limp Bizkit isn't relevant anymore. It was so good, and it was so reassuring to me that my fandom was valid. I picked this album because it was difficult, I'll be honest, between this and Chocolate Starfish. They're so close together, and they're so both individually so strong. It was really like a coin toss of which of these I was going to do, and I landed on Significant Other because the artwork, the album cover, was in my head when I'm thinking of albums that I want to cover for this channel. Just the artwork of Significant Other kept popping into my mind. And so I thought, I guess that's one I've got to do. And I had one other album, which I was thinking about doing. Significant Other won out because, I don't know, it's just a lot of fun. Significant Other was a humongous financial success. It was released on June 22nd, 1999. It was produced by Terry Date. Their previous album, $3 Bill Y'all, I was never the biggest fan of, even to this day. It's a good demo, kind of, and I know a lot of people are going to hate me for saying this. It was produced by Ross Robinson. The $3 Bill Y'all was not anything close to what Significant Other was, as far as I'm concerned. With Significant Other, they knocked it out the park. Significant Other peaked at number 1 in the US Billboard 200. At least 16 million copies of this album have been sold worldwide. That's a lot of plastic. They're contributing to the end of the world by selling this album. The singles from the album were Nookie, Rearranged, End Together Now, and Break Stuff. These singles absolutely make sense to me, 100%. Because Nookie, what a banger. Rearranged is like a good melodic example of what they can do. End Together Now really leans into that hip-hop aspect that they brought to the table. And Break Stuff is break stuff. So the members of Limp Bizkit are Fred Durst on vocals, John Otto on drums, Sam Rivers on bass guitar, Wes Borland on guitar, and DJ Lethal on scratching and keyboards and sampling and all the nerdy stuff. And what a fun band. They get so much criticism, and I get where people are coming from with the criticism they receive, because if you're not a music nerd, you'll struggle to acknowledge the genuine musical technicality that a lot of Limp Bizkit's music has. The thing is, their discography is very diverse. They very much have their own specific sound. You put all of Limp Bizkit's songs on shuffle and pick 10 random ones, and they'll all sound quite different to each other, technically speaking. So you'll have some that have crazy noodly bass melodies going on, others where the bass guitar is pretty straightforward and simple. Some where the drums go absolutely insane, and other ones where the drum beat is just a simple hip-hop beat for the entire song. You'll have songs where Fred is singing and crooning in some songs, and then screaming his guts out on the next one. It's all over the place, but not in the sense that it's a mess. It's like everything, they know exactly what they're doing. They knew from the very beginning with $3 Bill Y'all, they knew who Limp Bizkit were. And that's still true with their latest release. Like, yes, it is scatterbrain ideas. They all add up to a good album and a good product. But I think I think a lot of people have it in their head that Fred Durst is a prick for some reason, which he really is not. And I'm kind of tired of hearing people say that, because he's a very good businessman. He's a very good salesman, if you want to put it that way. He's a very good frontman. He has his moments of being a very good lyricist. Definitely not all the time. And I think the moments, perhaps this is just cope on my part, and maybe this is just some crazy justification, but I feel like when he does stupid bumhole lyrics, it's on purpose, and he knows what he's doing, and it's perhaps ironic. It's not just because he can't think of what to say. He's just like, Limp Bizkit is a dumb, fun band. We don't take ourselves very seriously, so why should I write the most genius, poetic lyrics in the world? I believe, and again, because Fred Durst is very, 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 very intelligent, he always knew what the band should be, and they still are that way. In 30 years, you're going to come to the conclusion, perhaps I'm a terrible lyricist and I should stop doing it, or you're just leaning in to the fact that you can write dumb lyrics and still make a good song out of it. And I know they're portrayed as being frat boy, metal, and all the rest of it. They're very self-aware. I feel like they always have been. Obviously, when Fred was younger, he was probably making dumb decisions occasionally. We all have done. To just criticize Limp Bizkit in general because of Fred Durst is dumb to me. If you can't get past him because he annoys you so much, okay, fine. It behooves one to not have a personal vendetta against a musician, because it's a waste of energy. Limp Bizkit have come back in a very big way in the last few years. I've seen, either earlier this year or last year, doesn't really matter. In the last couple of years, I've seen they did a South American tour, which was enormous. Like, it looks like Woodstock 99 all over again, in terms of the sheer volume of the crowd and the reaction of the crowd. It was crazy. It was And it was really heartwarming to me because that means that, again, my weird nostalgia wave was not... It wasn't just me going through that, clearly. And at that time, when I had that weird nostalgia wave, that was probably around the time that Limp Bizkit released Gold Cobra, which is not their strongest work in my opinion. I've spoken about him before in a previous video, but my friend Luis, bearing in mind we would have been 12-ish at the time, he had an expanded version of Significant Other's artwork as his desktop wallpaper on his probably Windows 98 PC. I think that was my first introduction to Limp Bizkit, was just that visual of the album cover, and I'm like, that's a cool image. Without really thinking much more of it, without realizing that there was a band behind it. And he must have shown me, because he showed me, he shared a lot of music with me back in the day that, to this day, I still love. And I heard the album, and again, I wasn't blown away by it, but I did like it. It was cool. I was just needing something, like Limp Bizkit was here, and I needed stuff in terms of heaviness that was way up here. I had anger issues that he didn't, I think. Okay, so the intro to Significant Other is unremarkable, but it sets a good tone for the album. It's kind of stoking the fire a little bit. That nice hip-hop drum beat, where you're like, I'm genuinely not entirely sure what's coming. Are we approaching Nine Inch Nails? Are we approaching Tupac? Like, where is this about to go? And then Just Like This starts. Immediately, my first thought with Just Like This is actually Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. 1, maybe 2. I know those games in themselves had great soundtracks, but I do remember playing one of the early Tony Hawk's games, listening to this album particularly, and for whatever reason, this the drum beat intro reminds me of Tony Hawk's. Yeah, so this is kind of where hip-hop and metal truly meet. I know there's the Anthrax thing from several years before, but this, in terms of a band doing their sound, this was kind of where it all began. Also, Korn did sort of hip-hop-ish things, but it was more just in the beat, whereas this actually incorporated hip-hop style vocals as the main driving thing, until the chorus kicks in, and then, you know, it's like, oh, this guy can sing. Okay, cool. And I've heard a lot of criticism about Fred Durst singing. I've never understood where that criticism comes from. He's got a good voice. Maybe he doesn't always use it in the best way, but the dude can sing. He's such a versatile vocalist, and he even was back in this day. He can rap, he can sing, and he can scream. What more do you want? What more do you need from a metal vocalist? Even if he does 2 of those things, pick and choose which ones you want, that's still an advantage over most other singers, particularly at the time, where they just did one thing. And what a lovely little squelchy, wobbly synth line to take the place of the guitar in the verses. Again, really, like the choruses do the metal thing and the verses do the hip hop thing and slightly electronic thing. But as a first song to set the tone for the album, flawless. Yeah, it's a very fun first song. You get the sense immediately that he's not taking himself very seriously. I think if people do take him serious, I think that's probably actually people's problem. If people don't like Fred Durst, it's because they take him far more seriously than Fred Durst himself takes himself. I kind of got that even when I first heard the album back in the day. I'm like, okay, I think that's partly why I didn't gel with it so well, is because I want something that is not joking around. I want something that's like Slipknot, essentially, back then. Even as a kid, I'm like, okay, this guy's he's clowning around. And these days now, I appreciate that far more than I did back then. I like a band that is heavy and has something to say, but is not taking themselves super seriously. And like, you can't make jokes about us. We don't make jokes about ourselves. Blah, 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 blah. Don't be that guy. Don't be a humorless, arrogant twat. Who doesn't think Nookie is worthy of being in the list of greatest new metal songs of all time? It's an instant classic. I know the lyrics are dumb, and he's talking about shoving a cookie up someone's ass. It again reminds you that Fred is not a man to be taken all that seriously. You can be annoyed and shout and scream, but you can also joke at yourself. You can also have a sense of truly not giving a fuck. And he says that a lot in his music, and even that is a case study for not taking yourself that seriously. When you say that many times that you don't give a fuck, you clearly do give a fuck. But you know that you give a fuck. I don't want to get into psychology with Limp Bizkit and Fred Durst, but I do believe he is a lot smarter than most people think that he is. If you've never been cheated on by a woman, or a man for that matter, then perhaps you don't relate to the song. I have been. So I do. Again, in later years, I was like, oh yeah, that's happened to me. I get it. I understand. When I was 13, 14, not quite. I hadn't really been through those trials and tribulations of life yet. I think there's some clever lyrics on here. Not all of them, they're not the best lyrics in the world, but there are some clever little plays on words and making words rhyme that shouldn't rhyme that is worth acknowledging, I think, if you're being real, if you're pulling your head out of your ass, or the cookie out of your ass. And Limp Bizkit, unlike on $3 Bill Y'all, I feel like they have a real strong sense of song structure. $3 Bill Y'all felt like a cacophony of ups and downs and lefts and rights and swirly whirlies. It was very confusing. But in this album, 2 songs in, it's very clear where different sections of songs are. Nookie, it has a real sense of progression and going up and then coming down and going up and then going really high up and then coming back down again. It's not a lopsided or chaotic, noisy mess. It's very well structured music. And again, not the heaviest in the world, but heavy enough to get the blood pumping, for sure. I don't feel like there's anything I can say about break stuff that hasn't already been said a million times. The origin of the guitar riff apparently was Wes just fucking around and kind of being out of ideas for a bit, and then just went dun, and Fred, at least this is the way I interpret it in my head, Fred was like, do that over and over again for the entire song, and it works. It's like the Jaws theme music. Of course we should talk about the video. As I have said previously, if you haven't seen it, what are you doing? The amount of cameos in this video, Snoop Dogg, Jonathan Davis of Korn, if you didn't know, Dr. Dre, Eminem, Pauly Shore, Lily Aldridge, and Tony Hawk. What a who's who of the early 2000s or late 90s, I guess. It was such a visual of the band and Fred and everyone involved not taking it too seriously. Obviously, the business and all of that aside, that was taken seriously, of course. But the whole point of the song was not to be taken too seriously. If only those idiots at Woodstock 1999 had understood that, then it wouldn't be such an infamous mess as we all know it to be these days. And I'm not going to get into that whole thing now, because while it was, it occurred around the time this album was released, it's not relevant to this album particularly, but I will say Fred was not to blame. How many songs have you heard incorporating the description of shaving someone's ass with a chainsaw? Only Limp Bizkit could come up with that. Wes's guitar riffs on this album, I'm sorry. You've got Wes Borland, Monkey and Head of Korn. That's like the blueprint for anything new metal ever, pretty much. They just nailed the sound in such a way that led to, well, I mean, a lot of copycats. Korn were two guys going back and forth with two 7-string guitars. Wes Borland was only one guy, and he managed to nail it as well. We're not there yet in their discography. When they tried to do it without him, it didn't go exactly brilliantly. The riffs in Break Stuff, even though it's like 4 notes perhaps for the entire song, perfect. That intro bass riff on Rearranged will always remain in my mind. It's a beautiful... It's hard to put into words how I feel about it, actually. It's funky and pretty, deep and soulful and fun. Kind of, it feels like it's like stroking me on the face. That bass riff. Sam Rivers is a very, very good bass player. He's not your standard just follow the guitar type bassist. He really did lead the song in a lot of cases throughout all of their discography. And I feel like people don't mention him enough. Every member of Limp Bizkit brings such a strong element of creativity and dexterity. It's fascinating when you see 5 completely different people with very different backgrounds and musical tastes, but all have the same skill level and creativity level come together in a band that most people just reject just because of basically one of those members who doesn't even play any instruments. We've seen what happens when Fred does try to play musical instruments. But Sam Rivers is, I know this term gets thrown around quite a lot, but underrated as hell as a bass player. All you have to do is listen to the beginning of Rearranged to understand that. That's not a bass melody that is written by an average bass player. Again, Fred Durst being criticized for not being able to sing or people not liking his voice. I mean, if you just don't like his voice, fair enough, but someone saying he can't sing is absolutely not true. The bare minimum of being a vocalist and being able to sing, at least in the traditional sense, is being able to hit notes correctly, which he always did. And again, this was way back before pitch correction was, it's just a plug-in on your digital audio workstation. That didn't exist then. So if you heard someone sing correctly, then that's how they sounded. And so I won't hear any criticism about Fred not being able to sing, because it's simply not true. And again, this is the first time I'm going to go into DJ Lethal. What an essential part of the band. If DJ Lethal wasn't part of Limp Bizkit, a DJ slash, sampler, keyboard, electronics dude, if it was just Fred, drums, bass, and guitar, there would be a large layer of Limp Bizkit missing, which, again, I don't think a lot of people appreciate. I think people just think, oh yeah, the extra stuff that isn't a traditional instrument, it just happens, it's just by magic, it just appears there. No, there's a lot of thought that goes into that kind of stuff. And when that stuff is absent from the song, you would really notice it. I'm not saying the songs would be bad per se, but such a subtle but important and essential part of Limp Bizkit's music that I don't feel like DJ Lethal gets enough credit either. See, Fred saying, "I ain't no joke." I even think that's self-aware. I think if you have to actively tell people that you aren't a joke, you are acknowledging that you are joking. If you take the time and effort to record a song in which you say, "I'm not a joke," that must mean you're joking. Otherwise, you are genuinely taking yourself super seriously, and it would be very obvious. And I don't think anyone would ever say that Limp Bizkit took themselves super seriously. So, for the fact that he says, "I ain't no joke," is a joke in itself. Am I making sense? Again, I don't think he's actually talking about genuinely putting knuckles on someone's chin. I don't think he was the fighting type. He had a big mouth, sure, but he was smarter than that. He wasn't going to start a fight with someone on stage. It's not Black Flag. It's Limp Bizkit. Okay, this is going to be my first bit of criticism of this album. And it's only from a 2024 perspective. Because over the years, I've not really thought about it too much. But this album is an hour and 2 minutes long. And it didn't need to be that long. And part of the reason why it's that long is because there's these sort of not quite interludes, outros on the end of songs that last like 30 seconds sometimes that really don't need to be there. This song is a good example. There's like a answer phone message thing. Why is that there? I feel like it's maybe to create like an atmosphere. I feel like if you were to take Significant Other and cut off these needless non-songs, the album would be a lot shorter, probably down to maybe 50 minutes, and you'd have a much more consistent, albeit possibly exhausting runtime. Nobody Like You. I need to sample that intro. That guitar is so exciting. It's like a volcano's about to erupt. Okay, this is an interesting song for me. Not in the sense that I love the song or it sticks out in my mind on the album or anything, but it has Jonathan Davis from Korn. And as you may know about me, I'm quite a big Korn fan. Even then, this was like... Okay, here's a really weird comparison for all the millennial video game players. There was this... not rivalry, but like a matching between... I mean, they were friends. Jonathan Davis and Fred Durst were friends back in the day. In two of the biggest bands in the world in the late 90s, early 2000s. And in my head, and I've never heard this from anyone else, but maybe, just maybe, you can see where I'm coming from. Anyone that played Tekken 3, there was this supposed rivalry between Hwoarang and Jin, right? They were like the two main sort of antagonists of each other, and you were either a Jin player or you were a Hwoarang player. I was always Hwoarang, just for the record. And I always saw Jonathan Davis and Fred Durst in that same kind of way. I can't really explain why. It was just the two different mediums at the same time that I saw a parallel between. Maybe I'm crazy. But yeah, so the song featuring Jonathan Davis, I was like, oh my god, I know who Jonathan Davis is. He's from my favorite band, Korn. And that was exciting. Really exciting. Like, Jonathan Davis, oh, he's on a song with another band. That's cool. I will probably like this band. And I was right in that sense. Jonathan Davis doing his, at the time, signature, go! It's like, did you just sample that from Freak on a Leash? I'm pretty sure I've heard that somewhere before. But yeah, Nobody Like You is exactly where it needs to be on this album. Introducing someone new, 7 songs in now. And if you're going to introduce someone, Jonathan Davis is a good introduction. Thank you very much. Don't Go Off Wondering, I think, has some really good lyrics on it. Again, maybe I'm crazy. By all means, tell me I'm wrong. Okay, these, I think, are genuinely good lyrics. By all means, shoot me down in the comments. You want to know something? I can't believe the way you keep testing me and mentally molesting me. Would you think any less of me if I said that I'd be there? Would you think any less of me if I said I really cared? Of course you would, because you only want what you can't have. As for me, I'm stuck with my dick in my hand. Are those not good lyrics? Am I being stupid or something? You know, if we're talking about like A, B, hip-hop lyric writing, I think those are really good. Perhaps I'm just an idiot. Yeah, I think Fred Durst really gets an unfair rap, pun intended. when it comes to lyric writing. And again, he has some examples of very, very dumb lyric writing, but again, I feel like that's intentional. I feel like it's by design. Possibly just to annoy Here's the thought. Maybe he writes... Limp Bizkit were very successful, and so he starts writing lyrics that people perceive as being so bad that it annoys them so much that they tell other people about how much Limp Bizkit sucks, which gets people talking about Limp Bizkit, because bad publicity is good publicity. Again, is it just me? Am I overthinking this? Okay, so I will say the middle to the end of this song does kind of meander a little bit. I could see someone getting halfway through and going, yeah, let's get to the next song, because the next song is a banger. 1999. Limp Bizkit in this song are kind of doing the very straightforward Nirvana, tried and tested, mellow verse, heavy chorus, mellow verse, heavy chorus approach. And Fred Durst is a big fan of Nirvana and Kurt Cobain in particular. But it's such a heavy song, and again, a real sense of structure. The things, the toms going on in the like bridge towards the third quarter of the song, and then the crescendo at the end. The last quarter of this song is an absolute mosh pit anthem. It takes a while to get there, sure, but it when it hits, it fucking hits. So much energy in 1999. And actually, fun aside, there was a lot of energy in 1999. Unlike now, where everyone's docile. So we're getting to another single now with End Together Now. When I was a kid, I was really not into hip-hop at all. I can appreciate it these days, but then it kind of annoyed me. For no real reason. It wasn't hardcore metal, so it was out, basically. So I didn't really enjoy this song at the time, but what a banger. Okay, so again, another introduction of another artist in Method Man, who at the time, again, because I wasn't really into hip-hop, didn't really mean anything to me. Obviously I get it now. I liked Limp Bizkit incorporating elements of hip-hop into their music as a stylistic thing, but if it was just straight hip-hop, I was going to be not interested. And so this song really didn't do much for me now, but what a banger, and a really cool music video as well. And I think another good example in the music video of Fred and Limp Bizkit not taking themselves very seriously. Okay, on this song, it does show where Fred could improve his lyric writing. I feel like this is true on a lot of songs when Fred incorporates a straight up rapper, that it kind of reveals his perhaps slightly lacking lyrical skills in some aspects. When he's just isolated, he's fine. But when you put him next to a rapper, a straight up rapper, it kind of becomes apparent where he's kind of poo mouth. Yeah, it's a real fun party song. This has really worked well at a house party. If you've got a bunch of normies, let's say, if you were gonna choose a song off Significant Other, it would be In Together Now. And I think people would vibe with it. I think people would be okay with it even now. I think a lot of people would be like, that kind of sounds like Fred Durst. It's like, no, it's not Fred Durst. Don't worry about it. Don't even think about it. Have another drink. But again, this another song where there's this stupid, needless outro, I don't know what thing on the end, which lasts far too long. Just get rid of that shit. We don't need it. Okay, Trust is one of my favorite Limp Bizkit songs of all time. The verses are so exciting and they give me more testosterone. They're so like, argh. The drumming, the like what John Otto's doing on the snare, the drrr, 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 drrr. It's fun. It's real fun verses. And then when you get the release of the chorus, it's like it builds tension and then it releases it so perfectly. And I feel like this is a song that a lot of people don't talk about when it comes to Limp Bizkit. It's not one I hear much commentary on. I think most people, they focus on the singles, and the singles on this album are very, very well chosen singles, 100%. And I think Trust would have probably been a little too heavy for a single. For me back in the day, I think by the time I would have got to Trust, I was already kind of tuned out of the album. And then later, when I had this this like mid 2010s revelation about Limp Bizkit, I'm pretty sure this was one of the songs where I'm like, this is amazing! The crescendo at the end of the song, about 3 minutes in, I don't trust nobody, cause nobody trusts me. So much energy. It's like a fighting song. I wanna punch things. But again, this is a song that really suffers from the weird, needless outro into the next song thing. They should do a remaster, I feel, of this album and just cut all of that stuff off, and then re-release it. And people, I feel, I would be much more happy with it that way. But anyway, let's move on to No Sex. So I had a very painful and difficult breakup in 2015. And again, I had my Limp Bizkit re-evaluation period a couple of years before that, and this song, it became relatable for the first time. Because the story in the song is very similar to what I experienced in 2015. And yeah, the whole album is called Significant Other. The theme is breakup, bad partner, etc. It's not laid on thick throughout the album, for the most part, I don't think, until you get to No Sex, and then it's very, obvious what's being sung about. And yeah, for me, that was a very powerful song back in 2015, and it will kind of weirdly always remind me of that time, even though I'd known about this album for 15 years before. But it was a difficult time, and this song helped me get through it. Don't date sociopaths. Show Me What You Got, I think, is the first song on the album that I think is not very good. I know what it's about. I know the point of it. It's like, shouting out all these people and these people and these people that have, helped me throughout my career, and this place is cool and this place is cool. Does it need to be on the album though? Do you need to do that? And even if it was an instrumental, it would be kind of weak compared to everything else on the album. I could very much take it or leave it. I could cut this song entirely, which is 4.5 minutes. And then we're still knocking down that runtime for the whole album, which I think would be of good service to it. And so Show Me What You Got, I don't know, man. I think the reason why Show Me What You Got was written was so that he could do it live as just like a, I don't know, kind of reaching out to people kind of song. I don't know, man. I could, don't need it. And a lesson learned, why is this on the album? This again is a complete waste of the listener's time, in my opinion. It's 2 minutes 40 of nothing. Get rid of it, Fred. I can see why, at best, it adds to the atmosphere and the theme of the album. Again, cut it down, man. This album is, like I said, 1 hour and 2 minutes long. It could have happily been 45 minutes. If you strip all the fat from this album, you got a tight 45-minute runtime. You didn't need it to be 1 hour long, dude. Come on. And okay, part of the reason why this album is so long is because there's a song called Outro, which is 7 minutes long. Why? I think, actually, now that I'm doing this kind of freestyle. Listened to this album so many damn times, but I've never thought of how I'm going to analyze it, right? But we get to track 12, pretty much. I'm like, okay, that's it. Just end it there. We don't need anything that comes after track 12. Show Me What You Got, A Lesson Learned, an outro. We don't need any of that. And a large chunk of outro is just silence. And then you've got some weird skit thing at the end of outro. In my humble opinion, this is a strong stance, but I say end the album at no sex. We don't need anything after that. And get rid of all of the stupid outros after 2/3 of the songs, and you'd have a much stronger album. So, overall, this album, despite my criticism of the very end of the album, I think is brilliant. It's been a bit of a journey with me with this album. It's been in my life for so many years. Before I even knew what it was, in just the imagery of it, I'm like, oh, that's a cool picture, to then hearing the album and not really being into the album, and then a decade and a half later, suddenly realizing how good this album was, and now I'm a huge Limp Bizkit fan. I love a lot of their music, and I think this is one of their best albums. I think that I kind of share the same opinion as most people, is it's a very difficult toss-up between Significant Other and Chocolate Starfish. It's very difficult for me to decide on which is better. They both have a huge amount of nostalgia for me, but yet I still think that Still Sucks, their latest album, was also really good. Results may vary. I can appreciate, but definitely not their best work. And Gold Cobra was... But yeah, real talk, this is probably their best album, I think. But so far, at least on this channel, I think this is probably going to be my lowest rated album. After having reviewed it and really genuinely critically thought about it. So I'm going to give it an 8.5. No, an 8. I'm going to give it an 8 because 20% of it doesn't need to be there. If you cut off that 20% of nonsense gibberish that's just a waste of time, and you skip it, or there's so much shit on this album that doesn't need to be there. You get rid of that filler, those outros, and everything after No Sex, and it's probably almost a 10, honestly. The good stuff is so good, but the meaningless, meandering crap is annoying and frustrating because it tarnishes an otherwise very, very good album. I'm going to give it an 8. It could have been a 10, but it was not. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Significant Other. Thank you very much for watching. If you hate Limp Bizkit, why are you still here? If you love Limp Bizkit, let's communicate, because we seem like a dying breed. Or, I mean, if you look at the turnout for Limp Bizkit's South American tour recently, apparently not. But it seems like Limp Bizkit is a dirty word these days, and has been for a long time. So, yeah. Let me know in the comments what you think of my stupid, dumbass opinions. But still, I've not thought of how to end videos yet, so I'm just going to say, go away.